Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people what is the people. And that's your brain. The machine will be prevented more.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1, the listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You fall down the thunder, well now you got it. You tell them I'm coming, and Al's coming with me there. Al's coming with me.
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Wow, that's a little scratchy intro, isn't it? Welcome to America Free Radio. I am your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the truth will come through. Past meets the future. We will might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. There's a little bit of a thunderstorm happening right outside, so I got a little bit distracted there. We are streaming to you live through our friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Please make a point to go to freedomslips.com. The link is right up there on the feed in the video, because we are streaming to you live on Rockfin and Rumble and Facebook and Twitch and DLive and Twitter and Foxhole and YouTube, with archives saved on Odyssey. In other words, we're everywhere you want to be. We are the voice of the revolution. We're going to have some good information for you tonight. This week, I will be traveling to Mount Shasta for the Shasta Summer Conference. If you are within a couple hundred miles of Mount Shasta this weekend, you need to drive up, because it is going to be worth it. Many of the best speakers on the planet are going to be there, and you could be there too. And there are lots of ways to attend. 1 day, 2 days. You can attend all 3 days. You can come to the VIP supper Friday night and have supper with us all. There are lots of options for you. If you want to come and help as a volunteer, there are ways to get discounts. All you have to do is click on the link at my website, brooksagnew.blog, brooksagnew.blog. Click on the link under upcoming events and find out how you can get there within your budget. Let's see. We have a ton of news to go over tonight, but I don't have it all written, so I'm kind of drawing on. In fact, I just came from a staff meeting where we were going over the latest events in global economics and in the military operations that are going on to clean up the Nazis out of Ukraine and set that region right again, and at least get the buffer of security around Russia back where it needs to be. You're on Shasta now, old dog. Very good, very good. Oh, that's good. So we're the vibe is already going out. The light is already going out from Mount Shasta. So that's where you need to be this weekend. Make a point of it. If you're going to be anywhere to become enlightened this weekend, that's the place to be. And I might even say this summer, because it is kind of central. If you live in California or Nevada or Idaho or whatever, you can make your way over to Mount Shasta. Several items first I want to get out of the way before we get into the news. You have seen gas prices come down a little bit. I think I paid $4.80 a gallon last week, and gas is down now to about $4.15. I highly recommend that you fill up all your tanks. Just do it. Just go out, fill up all your tanks, okay? Top everything off. We don't know what's going to happen over the weekend. We do know that this administration does weird things on Friday night that have really no opposition in the press, because the press, first of all, is complicit, and the second is everybody kind of takes the weekend off. It's a different staff. It's a different news cycle. And I don't recommend turning the news on anyway, because it's all manipulative. I was listening to Breitbart this morning. Normally I listen to that pre-dawn when I'm on my way down to the plant. And I was shocked. Normally, guys that Frank Gaffney and Dan Gaynor, these people are normally well informed, but the propaganda that was spewed this morning at 7 a.m. was just off the chain. The global propaganda message that is going out there is that Putin is trying to put together the Soviet Union again, that he's taking over one nation after another. Nothing could be further from the truth. That is not what's going on. This is an entirely defensive operation that is taking place to protect the Russians living in Crimea and to protect the ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. Now, that being said, the things that are being done to play along with this, to play this proxy war against you, are nothing short of stunning. And they'll go down in history if history ever gets recorded from these times. I don't know if they'll take it from America Free Radio and other analysts like me that are out here in the mainstream. We represent the vast majority of Americans and free peoples of the world, and not the fake stream news that you're seeing on most of the broadcast media, be it TV or radio. What is that? Sammy Dark Skies? Oh, your 60th birthday is this Friday. Well, I would like to be 60 again. I think 60 was a kind of a cool age. I have to tell you, though, I got to tell you, Sammy, they're going to shorten years for you starting this Friday. Years drop to about 7 months. So if you have dreams, you want to get on them, you don't get a full 12 months to work on it now. You only get 7 months per year. That's how long your year lasts. I mean, it's 12 months for people that are younger than you, but as the older you get, the faster the years accelerate. So happy birthday. Happiest birthday to you. Good to see Eric out there and Blue Otter and let's see, Decker 1420. That's a name I haven't seen before. Nice to see you as well. Little emoji symbol in his chat. And I think what I will do is, let's see if I can just put that chat up there for everybody. So everybody can see it. There we go. So you can see how fast that streams. We don't ever ask for donations on this program. So if you want to give Top Chat, that is totally up to you. This program doesn't run on money from the listeners. We are not listener supported here. If you want to support a radio network, you need to support freedomslips.com. Okay? I make my own money. I do this purely as a service to you, to bring you good resources and a way to stay out of the way when things come toppling down, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Chad, good to see you out there. I think, let's see, Old Dog is there. Monterey 23 is there. I haven't seen my friends from Canada yet. They should be popping in there any minute. And we have listeners in Australia. We have listeners in Florida. This is good. So it's a good broad mix, and it's going to grow tonight. So we're not going to have a program this Sunday night, just by way of operation, by announcement. That is going to be a rebroadcast through the Truth Frequency Radio Network. It will not go out on the video feeds live. I may upload it later, but typically I don't do that when I'm traveling. So it's just one of those things. I have made a promise to myself and to you, unless it's absolutely not possible, as it was one Wednesday this year, that I will do a live program every single Wednesday in order to support Revolution Radio. We love that network, and we love the people that dedicate themselves to the truth. And who is that? How do you pronounce that? Zorthentech? Zorthentech. Good to see you out there, my friend. He's joining us on YouTube. And as you can see from the chat there, we consolidate DLive and Twitch and YouTube and, all of the chats except for Rumble. So if you know anybody at Rumble, let them know it's time. Integrate your chats with Restream. I know if we say this enough times, somebody at Rumble's going to hear that, because I think Rumble's killing it. They're just doing a great job out there. They're putting great content up there. It's a great platform. Just follow through, guys. Follow through. Integrate your chat with Restream. Restream is what most of the hosts use. Some of them use Streamlabs and some of the other integration online software. It's not free. It's a couple $100 a year to do this through Restream. But what it does, it brings all of the video platforms together so that I can send one video feed out and it spiders out to the other networks. It's a little latent. I mean, you can see a kind of a delay between my voice and the video, but that's okay. Most people play this audio behind their worksheets during the week, or their blueprints that they're drawing, or writing that they're doing, or meditating that they're doing. And so we just try to bring you good information and a good sound and great spirit, so that you leave the day positive, you know what to do, and you know how to stay out of the way. So speaking of toppling down, I think most of you have seen the video of somebody in the middle of the night using infrared photography. They blew up with explosives one of the Georgia Guidestones. And what it did, since there are 4 stones with a capstone on top, it just blew the crap out of this one stone. I don't know how much it weighed, probably 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pounds, something like big, heavy piece of granite. Just blew the shit out of it. Nothing but gravel. And today, somebody went out there with a big, long backhoe, a track excavator, and they tore the rest of it down. So the Georgia Guidestones, whoever went out there 20-something years ago and set those Guidestones up with some kind of agenda that the globalists had put together, which was to reduce the global population to 500 million, I'm sure you wouldn't be one of the ones to survive. There'll be slaves that will pretty much feed the global syndicate with the things that they need, shoe latchets and diesel fuel and such. It's gone. It's been taken down. So it's as if it never existed, and hopefully the record of it will be expunged from human memory. Oh, nice to see you, Irel Avant, down there in Garland, Texas. Very nice. Gary Hendershot, haven't seen you for a while. That's good to have you back. He's on D-Live. Yes, somebody set the camera up on a tripod, I would say maybe 100 yards away from, and when the explosives went off, rocks tumbled across the meadow almost to where the camera was. I was pretty surprised. I don't know what blew it up. I don't think it was dynamite. There was no fireball with it. Could have been tannerite. Tannerite's something you can transport legally, and it is quite explosive, but you have to have a lot of it to make anything serious happen, and you have to contain the explosion. But it did enough damage to make the structure of it unsafe, and somebody, I think with the county down there in Georgia, maybe an angel went down to Georgia and set up the backhoe and tore that damn thing down. So I've been wanting someone to blow that thing up for a long, long time. It's about time. Not quite human. Good to see you out there as well. That's right. Love for the human race brought it down. Nothing is going to make the human race go back to 500 million people. It ain't going to happen. If we went to 500 million people, we're going to be rubbing 2 sticks to make fire. And that's not what the global syndicate wants. So that's the first item news. The second is another beacon went dark. And I got to say, I'm a little sad to see this, because if you've read my book, Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy, it isn't cheap. It's $30. I don't make any money on this book because I published it in color on premium paper. And the reason I did that is because a lot of the renderings of spacecraft and of the Space Force and things like that, they just didn't look good in black and white. And so I had the book published in color. And so I'm selling it about for cost. It's not a big seller. It's a conversation piece, but it has a lot of good data in it. And mostly what it does, it covers 2 programs. One is called the Cislunar program, and the other is the Cis-Mars program. There's 4 chapters on the Space Force in there. And, of course, people always say, well, why haven't we gone back to the moon? Because we don't want to go back to the moon and pick up rocks. We've done that. It's boring. We know what we know, and now we need to mine the moon. Well, that's not going to be easy to do. There is perhaps a military advantage to being on the moon, but not much. If you're sitting on the moon and you don't have the infrastructure to back it up, there's not much hope for you. I mean, they could basically drop a rock on you on the moon, and you're done. That's it, because there ain't no air, and it's cold on the surface. On a good day, it's treacherous. On a day with, say, a solar flare, or on the dark of the moon when the sunshine's not shining on the surface, it's even more treacherous. It's down, toward 50 to 80 Kelvin, and you can't make it. You have to have $1 million suit to walk around, and you're only going to have a few hours of air because there's nothing making anything on the moon. So this cislunar program begins with a launch of what's called the CAPSTONE. Now, the CAPSTONE is a moon probe, and it orbited Earth for a while, and recently it left Earth's orbit, and it took off to the moon. It only weighs 55 pounds, so it's not like a big space program, but it's key because after on July 4th, when it separated from its Rocket Lab Photon spacecraft bus, it headed toward the moon. It's only 2 days away, so the idea was to go in and orbit around the moon. They have briefly reestablished communications with the CAPSTONE, but then it went dark. Okay, it was looking healthy and happy, and suddenly it just went dark, and we don't really know why. We don't know if it was a failure of the battery on board. It has solar panels on it, so it kind of powers itself from sunlight. But this cislunar autonomous positioning system technology, that's what CAPSTONE is, for operations and navigation. It launched to the moon earlier this year, and the mission is a rapid and very low cost. I mean, it's about the size of a good sized beer cooler, and it's designed to establish a navigation beacon for the Artemis program. The Artemis program is a big, comprehensive program. We're building a way station between the Earth and the moon so that when spacecraft launch, they can refuel, they can repair, they can, get resources that they need on the way to the moon and on the way back from the moon. That way it's not 250,000 miles of Death Valley. And it's going to leverage this efficient pathway to the moon we call cislunar space. And it's going to be further developed because what will follow are more GPS satellites that will go into fixed orbit in a network around the moon. And then what will happen is a moon anchor, as it were, will be placed on the moon on a couple sides, maybe equatorial front and back, and maybe the North and South Pole. But what it will do is it will fix this GPS grid around the moon. Currently, what everybody uses are the GPS satellites around Earth. But, Earth's 250,000 miles away. So you don't really get, turn by turn, plus or minus a meter resolution. And that's why a lot of stuff splats on the moon, because you don't have a fine tune adjust. Okay. It's like looking through a drinking straw while driving down the freeway. It can be done, but it is, if there's a lot of traffic or if there's a lot of turns, you're risking a lot. You can't really gauge your speed because you don't have anything to gauge it by except for the GPS satellites around the Earth. So the plan is to put GPS satellites around the moon. This is all part of the Artemis program. Now it's going to take years to put this stuff together. It has to be built. It has to be launched in pieces. It has to be assembled in space. This is not easy to do. We built an International Space Station, but my gosh, it's taken, 25 years to build it to its current size, and it has all kinds of different technology, inflatable technology and metal technology, and It's constantly getting, resupplied from the Russians and not so much from the Americans, but because Barack Obama ended American spacecraft going up there, and then Elon Musk revived it, and the Falcon has gone up there several times to drop people off, to bring people back, and it's been very successful in doing that and very cheap compared to what governments have done. And what this did is it kind of integrated private industry into what has been, basically a defense industry in space. The defense industry puts up most of the satellites, especially surveillance satellites. Even the weather satellites, even the GPS satellites have to go up on government spacecraft until SpaceX. Now, SpaceX has launched, of course, Starlink and other things for the government that they have done cheaply because their rockets are reusable and recyclable. They land like, Flash Gordon rockets on either ocean-going landing platforms or land-based landing platforms. It's amazing. And the more they do it, the better they get at it. And the nice thing about these rockets is they use methane. They don't use hydrogen peroxide. They don't use solid boosters, which are hard to recycle, and we've already had problems with those. Controlling the pressure with solid boosters is a little difficult to do, if not impossible. And these are cheap rockets. They burn at lower temperatures. They're able to recycle them. They land themselves back on the ground. They can be reloaded and back up in space in a matter of days instead of years. It has really revolutionized at least low or orbit space travel. Now it's getting ready to stretch to the moon. But as I said, there is infrastructure that needs to be put in place. That's what the Artemis program does. Now, yes, Trump and the Space Force, they're talking about Mars. Elon Musk is talking about Mars. And that's kind of the long-range goal. Actually, there's a goal after that. That's why I wrote the book Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy. Because when we get to Mars, it is going to be very difficult, if not close to financially impossible, to supply Mars with the raw materials it needs to grow a colony there. It's just not going to be financially possible to do it. There's not enough dark money on the Earth to do it. However, there are resources in the asteroid belt which are just beyond Mars. And by resources, I mean major resources, iron and nickel and all kinds of organic material, like you can get methane and you can get water and all kinds of things are right there. You don't have to ship them from Earth. We don't have to take seawater and ship it to Mars 2 years away. We can do this from the asteroid belt. It is feasible, and it is financially way beyond anything we could do. A little bit of thunder outside. We'll make it. We're fine here. The odds of getting struck by lightning at this studio are like not calculable, but it's going to be an interesting program tonight nonetheless. So the point is that a lunar base has to be built first. And where would you build a lunar base? Well, there are rumors that the Chinese have a small base on the far side of the moon. And I say rumors with a small r because there's not much going on the moon. Not from an equatorial point of view. That's just going to be exploration, looking around, and I mean, in a few days you're going to be bored out of your mind. The real treasure on the moon was found in 2006 with a program called the L-Cross mission. Now, the L-Cross mission was repurposed, as I have said on this program before, but if you're new, it's going to be new to you. The L-Cross mission was a spacecraft that was in two parts. And the first part of it was, of course, the launch engine, the steering, and powers most of the systems. And the second part was a broad spectrum spectrometer. And the spectrometer was being used to examine particles and wavelengths of light that are around the moon. So what happened was the engine of it ran out of fuel prematurely. It ran low. And so what they decided to do was repurpose the mission over what's called Schrodinger's Basin. Schrodinger's Basin is like the Arctic Circle, except it's on the south pole of the moon. This is a good place because the closer you get to the South Pole, the more sunlight you get 24 hours a day. And if you get up into the high mountains surrounding some of the craters, specifically what's known as Shackelford Crater, you have sunlight 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never goes dark. So obviously setting up solar power receivers on the ridge of those mountains would be able to provide electricity without ever going dark. Now, of course, you have to understand, once you get down inside these craters, you drop down below about 50 Kelvin. This is really cold. It's cold enough to freeze solid helium-3. And that was what was discovered with the L-Cross mission. Basically, what happened is they broke the ship apart into two pieces, and then one piece fell to the moon, struck either right on or near the Shackelford crater. When it struck, of course, it did so at about 8,000 miles an hour. And when it, of course, that's basically a hypersonic dead weight. And when it hit the surface with the low gravity of the moon, it created a huge plume of material. And what they did is they flew the spectrometer right through that plume of material. And on its way to the surface of the moon and certain doom, it gathered all this information, analyzed what it could see, and sent the information to Earth. And then poof, it self-destructed on the moon's surface as well. Now, we were looking at this impact from Earth with telescopes, and we were looking at it with spectral software so we could see what we could see. Now, obviously, a lot of these minerals didn't volatilize. That is to say, they didn't burn. One of the ways, if you're in freshman chemistry lab, that you do qualitative analysis, not quantitative, but qualitative analysis, is that you light a Bunsen burner. I don't have one here in my studio, but if just imagine a blue flame burning on the top of my finger. No, just imagine. It's not actually doing it. But you could take a wire loop and you could dip it into a test tube with some liquid in it, and you could hold the tube over the fire. And what would happen is the fire would volatilize that water or that liquid on the loop. And when it volatilizes, the chemical bonds for the molecule or for the atom break apart. And when they break apart, it emits a photon of light specific to that length of those protons linked to other protons and the electrons that surround it. And the photon of light is specific to those elements. So we could tell it's potassium or a phosphorus, or we could tell it's titanium, and we could tell helium-3 and water, of course. So this is what happened, but without the flame. So we couldn't see it from Earth. It didn't volatilize. It didn't issue the photons. We didn't see it. But the spectrometer had a detector on it. It had a flame ionization detector on it. So when it ingested the plume, it volatilized inside the spectrometer, gathered the information, and radio broadcast it back to Earth in the few minutes it took for it to crash to the moon. So we learned a lot from the L-Cross mission in 2006. And what did we learn? We learned that there's a shitload of water on the moon, and not in the form of oceans, but locked into the soil and frozen down in these craters that never see direct sunlight. And what has happened, of course, is they've gathered through cosmic radiation millions and millions of years of primordial elements frozen in this, like an upside down Mount Everest inside the moon, with a surface well below the mountains around the crater, which we call Shackelford Crater. Now you have all this picture. We know that there is a treasure trove in the form of about 10,000 years of helium-3 fuel sitting on the moon. Now, that being said, we haven't really on Earth figured out how to fuse helium-3 together to make helium-4. Theoretically, we know what will happen. When helium-3 fuses with helium-3, it forms helium-4, and it kicks off two protons, no neutrons. So therefore, it's not radioactive. But protons are plus charged. So you get electricity from that. You get a charge. You can use a grid, and you can influence these protons just like a vacuum tube did in old-style technology here on Earth, except we were influencing electrons, but you'd be influencing protons, and you get electricity just like you would with, say, a fusion car or something. It isn't actually fusion, but it is hydrogen powered by converting the protons directly into electricity. So the other thing, of course, that you get is a tremendous release of energy in the form of heat. And that heat can be used to do all kinds of things. It can be used as rocket fuel. I mean, a fusion rocket would have a tremendous amount of thrust. It would be able to power our spacecraft to speeds that we have not been able to achieve before. Right now, we're going to Mars at about 25,000 miles an hour. And if you're going 52 million miles, it takes a while to get there. 7 months on the short end, 2 years on the long end. And we have to do what's called the Hohmann maneuver at that low speed, which the Hohmann maneuver is a little bit like, shooting doves, I guess. A dove flies at 70 miles an hour, so you don't aim your shotgun right at the dove. You lead the dove with the shotgun, and by the time the shot gets there, the bird flies through it, and you have contact. Well, that's what you have to do, but you got to do it precisely. Just ask the Brits. They launched what's called the Beagle 2, which was a probe that was supposed to land on the moon, and it didn't. It splatted on the moon. Oh, it left a hell of a scratch on the moon. Not an easy thing to do. The first probes that we launched to Earth, our little rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, they were inside massive airbags because we really didn't know, what the exact speed to land something on Mars was going to be. It was really our first time. So when it struck, it just bounced and rolled and bounced and rolled, and finally, when it came to a stop, they deflated the bags and drove the rovers out. It worked. I mean, it was kind of low tech, but it was brilliant in its design, and it worked. After that, we kind of figured out what it takes to actually land something on Mars, and so this most recent one with Curiosity aboard and the helicopter, it actually worked a lot better. We were able to gauge the speed and land it, but it still took a long time to get there. Fusion rocketry would cut that travel speed to about 70 days instead of 7 months on the short side. And it makes the Hohmann maneuver a lot easier to do because you don't overshoot Mars and end up out in Jupiter, and you don't undershoot it and have to catch up with it in the orbit. We can easily do it with fusion rocketry. The second thing is, and this is where it really benefits Earth, is that this helium-3 fusion can be used to generate heat in our nuclear reactors. So if we retrofit our reactors, which is costly but not prohibitively so, we end up with non-radioactive heat that's able to make steam and turn the turbines and drive the generators, which generate our electricity. No more nuclear waste. And if we're able to bring that back to Earth in solid form like it is on the moon, We just simply feed it to the reactors, and a shipping container of the stuff would power, Los Angeles for 20, 25 years. Obviously, it would be financially beneficial. It would pay for itself. Don't you think that's a wonderful idea, that space would actually pay for itself? Kind of like GPS satellites, kind of like, all of the GPS locators pay the GPS satellite owners to access those signals. They make money off of it. All the radio satellites that are used to bounce radio programs and TV programs like this one to you right now, live all over the world, all of that makes money. So why not make money with the moon? It's a smart idea. Come on, it's smart. Once we get a lunar colony operating near the Shackelford crater in the Schrodinger's Basin, which, by the way, has a lot of volcanic vents that reach 15 to 20 kilometers inside the planet, we can, if you read the book, you'll see we use 3D printers, robots, to seal up the openings with airlocks, pre-built airlocks. We put them in, and then we 3D print the airlocks in with a couple 100-foot thick walls of lunar soil. What does this do? Well, it allows us to create an environment inside the moon. Yes, we can actually pressurize it to, somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000 feet, about what it is inside of an airliner. You don't have, sea level pressure inside of an airliner. You're at about 6,000 feet. And it has a pressure regulator that keeps the aluminum tube that you're in at 40,000 feet at 6,000 feet, so you can breathe and surf the internet and sleep and stuff and stay alive. Same thing on the moon. And you don't need a spacesuit any longer. You can bounce around at 1/6 gravity on the inside of the moon. And you use the helium-3 to run the reactors to provide the power for the moon. You don't have to send any fuel from Earth to the moon to power up this stuff. The only thing you need to send are tools, because all the natural resources are there. Now, is this a quick fix? No, it is not. And as I explained on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, this is a 20 to 50 year project to build a lunar colony, something that could support 10, 20, 50,000 people working on the moon at a factory or at a facility that cores out this energy and sends it back to Earth. Plus, because you have water, because you have helium-3, you have sources for oxygen, atmosphere, and you have sources for fuel right there on the moon. Now, don't you think it's a smart idea that instead of building all this stuff here on Earth and fueling it all up and launching it out at 20,000 miles an hour to break Earth's orbit, it's enormously expensive. It's right now, well, I don't even know what the inflated cost is, but 3 years ago it was $10,000 per kilogram to get something into space. Well, when you're launching a 1 million pound spacecraft in pieces, do the math. It's enormously expensive. It's in the billions and billions of dollars to get that into orbit around Earth. And then it's even more expensive to get it up to speed to break Earth's orbit and head it out into deeper space, further out orbits, say 25,000 or 50,000 or 200,000 miles from Earth. That's cislunar space. Now, if you can launch that stuff from the moon, it's a fraction the cost. You don't have an atmosphere, you don't have to worry about weather, and you don't have to worry about gravity so much. It's easier to put this heavy stuff up into orbit around the moon and then launch it out further distances to either Lagrange points along the orbit or in position between actually orbiting around the sun, in position between Earth and Mars. So it's kind of a way station. And that means that you could refuel not just spacecraft, but you can refuel satellites. You could have a whole industry of upgrading and refueling satellites that are already in space, harvesting millions of tons of, well, at least thousands of tons of defunct satellite gear that's in low Earth orbit. Don't burn it up in the atmosphere and risk dropping it on somebody's hacienda. Take it to the moon. Take it to the moon and salvage that stuff and build other craft from it. I would love to have a business like that. I'm telling you, I dreamed of that since I was a little kid, having a business like that. So all of these ideas kind of, well, they do change the energy picture for Earth. It changes it in a lot of ways. First of all, of course, it allows us to live within the energy set of Earth without shoveling it into our gas tanks and burning it. But it also, sort of decentralizes, or at least takes away the scarcity of energy on the Earth. And when you take away the scarcity of energy on the Earth, war pretty much becomes obsolete. There's like the struggles that we're going through right now is because Europe and China, they don't really have large reserves of oil and gas on their land masses. It's just the way the cards were dealt, Earth Explorers, just the way the cards were dealt. Russia, on the other hand, this vast land mass that stretches from ocean to ocean, 11 time zones. We have 4 time zones in the U.S., 11 time zones. It has thousands of years of oil and gas. The problem is that they don't belong to the global syndicate. They're not part of it. So they've been piping that energy and shipping that energy to Europe for about 25 years, since 1991. And they've built they've built actually 2 pipelines, but Nord Stream 2 is not operational. Nord Stream 1 was operational, shipping natural gas and oil to Germany. But that has since become non-strategic because the Pan-European Army doesn't want to support Russia. And so this conflict over energy is why this whole military operation is going on in Europe and threatens to pull the whole world into a world war over oil and gas. I mean, Earth Explorers, we're in the 21st century here. Why are we fighting over crude oil? There is more than enough to supply Earth for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. The reason we're fighting over it is because the feudal tribes of Europe, which make up the core of the global syndicate, and they've infected more than you know. They've infected the Communist Chinese Party. They've totally infected our government here in this country, and they don't want to pay. They don't want to play with Russia. They want Russia inside the global syndicate, and Russia wants to stay sovereign. Something we were trying to do from 2016 to 2020. We were trying to make America sovereign again. That we had our own energy, we could make our own food. We were no longer beholden to anybody. We weren't buying oil from Saudi Arabia anymore. We were sovereign. We were actually in a position to export oil and refined products as well, like gasoline and diesel fuel and various chemicals and monomers and stuff like that to make hard goods. That's not what the Global Syndicate had in mind. The Global Syndicate wants to control all that. They don't want to pay for it. They don't want to trade for it. They want to control it all. And so that's what this whole struggle in Ukraine is all about. And of course, food goes along with it. Fertilizer goes with it. And there are other manufactured goods. right now, what we have are three main forces that are fighting one another on this tiny little fragile planet. We have Russia, we have the Pan-European Army, which is basically the global syndicate, and you have China. China is saying, we don't want to be part of your global syndicate. We're making our own global syndicate we call BRICS. And it is having its problems. A lot of the countries that they invested money in are not good returns on those investments, and so they've turned out to be a financial drain on the Communist Chinese Party, and so subsequently their bond market and other things are in big trouble. And believe me, the crash that's going to hit China is going to make what the crash that hit the U.S. in 1928 look like a flea market. It's going to be epic. I don't know that the country of China will survive. It is also vast, and it is also, I think you'll agree with me, under military control instead of government control. Like the United States, we don't use our military to keep the 50 states in line. We don't have to. We have 50 states. The 50 states are supposed to cooperate in a system of commerce that is managed by our federal government. Now, it's turned us into something else. Now the federal government believes that they run all the states, and that's not the case. That's not the case. Right now, there's a struggle going on, and we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit, between states, namely Arizona, and the federal government. Arizona has said, first of all, we're gonna decertify our 2020 election because we now know there was a lot of fraud, and we're going to make a lot of arrests. And by the time we get to the bottom of it, Joe Biden didn't win Arizona. They're also recently passed a set of regulations. Let me take a sip of water here. They've passed a set of regulations, laws, that say you must have proof of citizenship in order to vote in the 2022 election. Well, Merrick Garland, under direct orders of the Global Syndicate, has sued the state of Arizona, saying you can't do that. This is going to very quickly elevate to the Supreme Court. It won't take long. I don't think it's going to happen before the election, but Arizona is going to do what they're going to do. They are going to manage their election, lawsuit or no lawsuit. If the lawsuit does make it to the Supreme Court, it'll be an absolute miracle, but it's probably going to happen in the next court, in the next session. What's going to happen is the Supreme Court is going to rule in favor of Arizona. Now, why do you think that is? Because in the Constitution, the federal government is not involved in elections. In fact, it explicitly says in the Constitution, states run their own elections. They decide, except for the date, the first Tuesday in November every 4 years, they decide how their elections are going to be done. They decide how registration takes place. They decide what days it's going to take place. They decide how the votes are counted. They decide whether they're going to do absentee votes or in-person votes, a few days like Delaware, or stretched out for over a month like Washington State, all mail-in ballots. The states decide. Federal government has no say in that. So Merrick Garland's lawsuit is frivolous, meaningless, and it's just meant to stretch things out and take control from a federal point of view of elections. The federal government does not have elections. Only the states do. And the states collect those electors and bring them to Washington and have a vote day where all the votes are tallied and the election is certified, right? We saw that happen in January, right, of 2021. That's how it's done. The federal government does not manage elections. It can't happen. There is no law. There is no constitutional basis for that law if they're going to try and sue. It doesn't mean you can't sue. You could get sued for anything, and believe me, the DOJ is famous for doing it under the direction of whoever's president at the time. Now, President Trump didn't do that just by way of principle, but Bill Clinton did it routinely. I remember Bill Clinton getting on national television and saying, "I am directing the Department of Justice to sue Microsoft." Microsoft is a private company. They're not even a government. They're going to sue Microsoft because they're a monopoly, because they control the browser that they ship with their software. I hate to tell you, but at the time, Internet Explorer was not the browser of choice. It was AOL. Yeah, America Online was the first really big browser, right? And that went kind of the way of MySpace. There's still some people out there with AOL addresses, but I mean, there have been movies made about this, right? It was ridiculous. But the fact that that Bill Clinton said, "I'm directing the Department of Justice to sue Microsoft." Well, I hate to tell you, but you know what happened, right? Bill Gates said, "Well, we know our way to a courtroom. We know our way to a courtroom," and they fought him, and they won, and that's the end of that. Yeah, see, Chad says his mom still has AOL. One of my roommates has AOL as his address. You've got mail. I mean, come on, everyone used it. In fact, there are a lot of people today that don't like Internet Explorer. They use Chrome. I use Chrome. Chrome works pretty seamlessly with everything. I know what you say about Google, but I do business with them, and it works for me. Even though they, ban me for life from PayPal, ban me for life from Venmo, and that's okay. There are other banks that are willing to do business with us, and we do business with them, and we do business every single month, and I'm happy with the way it is. Yes, I would like to sell 1,000 books a month instead of 300, but that what it is. I don't control that. You all control that. You talk to your friends and say, "I read this book, I really like it, go buy it," and that's how it grows. Let's see. Okay. And that's how all this ties together with the moon. I kind of went full circle with that. But that's why it's so important that this CAPSTONE project, and what's so mysterious about it, because there ain't a whole lot to go wrong with this little beggar. And it was orbiting Earth for a while and talking back and forth, and all the software was working, all the retro rockets, everything on it was working fine. And then it broke orbit and headed out to the moon, and somewhere between here and the moon, it went dark. And people are wondering why. Now, there is speculation that some kind of military operation, some ray or something blasted at the CAPSTONE and it went dark. It could be China, because this is an American effort. It should be a human effort, but it was an American effort. And maybe the Chinese have operations around the moon that they're trying to get a leg up on, if you know what I mean. Because I have often said, and I say in the book, that he who controls the moon will control the Earth. Does that mean China controls the moon? Hell no. Not even close. Not even close. But they may have an operational... Hey, you know what? We're already at break time. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. Don't go away. One more hour to go.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mystery? Real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's iPhone thinking. Welcome to the crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Okay, fantastic. We love our friends down at Revolution Radio, and they're running out of freedomslips.com. Freedomslips.com, like slip and fall, only freedomslips.com. Go there, couple dollars a month, set it up on Patreon, set it up on a regular donation. Trust me, if 100,000 of you did this, we could change the world. We could change the world. We probably have more listeners than CNN. So a lot of great hosts on this network. There are so many hosts. We have 2 studios, Studio A and Studio B. So just to give you an idea how dedicated the staff is and what a great job they do in providing us not only a platform but a very tight board. So, and that's kind of studio talk for they start on time, they break on time, and everything operates year after year. And it's great to be a TFR member too, Truth Frequency Radio Network. If you go out to TalkStreamLive.com, TalkStream is a clearinghouse for all kinds of podcasting. But it's a clearinghouse for networks, okay? So Blaze is there, and CNN is there, and Fox Nation is there. They all go out through TalkStream Live. Now, the interesting thing is Truth Frequency Radio Network and the Revolution Radio Network are ranked right up there in the top 10 or 12 networks out there. So this is really great. We're on both networks, and we're right in the top 2 or 3 of the programs on those networks, and we think we do a good job. I don't ask for money. It's just kind of refreshing, I think. And to tell you the honest truth, when I listen to other podcasts, the constant request for money kind of wears me out. I don't know if it wears you up, but it wears me out. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in San Diego. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's a type and a shadow. You know, I'm getting ready to fly again this weekend out to see some of you, shake your hands, and sell some books and sign some books and get to know you, have some dinner with you, whatever. And I'm relying on the airlines to be punctual, to do what it is that they say they're going to do, that we pay thousands of dollars to them each time we do. I want them to be safe. I want them to be in the air. I want the airplanes to be well maintained and on time in as much as it is possible, right? But you know what happened in 2020 and in 2021. We were attacked with a bioweapon, and it wasn't all that deadly, I would say. I think if you had a compromised immune system, like any flu, people die. And it's more the body trying to fight off the symptoms. And if you don't have an immune system that can, readily dispatch viruses, it could kick your ass. And this particular virus liked to jump down into the lungs with both muddy boots. That being said, there are therapeutics, Ivan and Roxy, which I had the ad posted up there just a minute ago. Ivan and Roxy, you know what they are. You've heard enough about them. I don't have to go into any detail on that. The trouble is, you can't get it. I mean, you can go to your doctor, but he's not going to prescribe it to you. And even if he does prescribe it to you, when you go to the pharmacy, they may not supply it to you. Or if they do supply it to you, it's going to be exorbitantly expensive. $350 a month for a pill that should cost 70 cents. It's nuts, right? But if you go to my website and you follow the links in my store, you can get it without a prescription, shipped directly to your house. And you can have it in your arsenal. So if you do get the flu that's going around, different variations of it, because they were doing this gain of function crap, you can fight it off. Take the Ivan, get rid of the virus, take the Roxy, and keep your lungs operating the way they're supposed to operate, and you don't end up with this cheesy effects. And you don't have to take the jab. And hashtag pure blood, okay? Just hashtag pure blood. But the San Diego police force is really having a problem. And they're not the only ones. San Diego's witnessing the largest exodus of police officers from the city in probably 13 years. It's a long time, okay? After the real estate crash in 2008, lots of city budgets suffered, and city budgets had to lay off cops. This is 2009, during the Obama years. Police were really getting a bad rap. But the reason they're quitting now is because of San Diego City's continued maddening obsession with the jab, okay? And it's serious. And what's happening is the smartest move the people of LA County ever made was to elect Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who refused to enforce the jab. He didn't enforce the jab, and he kept a lot of the city workers employed because they didn't then get summarily fired because they wouldn't take the jab. Now, you contrast this with the LAPD, not so lucky. Officers have to quit in droves or were fired, with over 2,000 or 2,200 employees refusing to comply. They didn't take the jab, they were fired. And I mean, I haven't taken the jab, none of it. And I'm 67 years old, and I'm in amazing shape. But I have Ivan and Roxy in my arsenal. And when I travel, which I'm going to be doing this Friday, I'm taking Ivan and Roxy while I travel, because I don't know who I'm going to be around in that aluminum tube up there in the air or at airports, or who I'm going to be around in Shasta. So I don't take any chances. I preemptively take this stuff so that I don't have a problem with it. But this situation across California has become horrible. I mean, just horrible. I was just out there, and people are just nutso. I mean, I'm seeing people riding around in their cars by themselves, still wearing a stupid mask. Can you believe that? They're in their own car with their own filtered air, and they're riding around with a mask. It's nutso. Anyway, 230 San Diego police officers have left city employment in the 2022 fiscal year alone. These are sworn deputies. They were sworn in 2021. And you don't think it's that many, but it's 22% of all the deputies in active service. 22%. That means the bad guys are going to be able to do whatever the hell they want, and city officials are scrambling to increase incentives to lure new officers into the ranks, including the approval of a 10% pay raise. But many within the department are still well aware that this outcome was looming. They knew it was going to happen because these grown men who are healthy, perfect specimens of health, they're not going to take the jab. They're not going to do it. They don't want to be sterile. They want to live past the age of 40. They use their heads. They probably listen to this program. And the lack of officers has led to horrendous wait times for emergencies. And it's not just cops. It's also EMT. It's also social workers. The whole government support staff is suffering because of this insanity that I believe is the chemical war that the global syndicate is waging against the human race. Jared Wilson, who is the president of San Diego Police Officers Association, says that the jab mandates are the breaking point for a lot of these deputies. They're not going to do it. And it's not all that surprising, okay? People are smart. They can look around and see what's going on. They see that the fatality rates, the sterilizations, the miscarriages, the damage in the form of strokes, in the form of paralysis, in the form of microclotting, 65% of the bodies that are going to the morgue are filled with these stringy white clots. It's not blood. It's not something we've ever seen before. It's coming from the jab. It's coming from the jab. I don't know if it's plastic or if it's carbon or what it is, but these clots form like webs throughout the circulatory system. And we don't know if it's the cause of death of these 65% of the bodies that they're seeing. It's a cinch. Not all of them are dying of old age. And we don't actually have autopsies being paid for to get to the bottom of it because the fascists don't want to get to the bottom of it. That's it, pure and simple. It pure and simple. Trust me, if 65% of the dead are exhibiting this same symptom, why the F wouldn't the National Institutes of Health be all over it? Why not? Because they're in on it, okay? And the attitude once again shows that these mandates are about control. They're about control. They're not about public health. They're not about public safety. People are dying. People are being injured by these jabs. And the data is irrefutable. Trust me, Earth Explorers, I'm a statistician. I make my living with statistics. Every day, I've worked for the Fortune 100 for 2 decades because I'm really, really good at what I do. And I'm telling you, and I told you on Easter Sunday in 2020, the stats are with me. We're never going to see 25,000 dead from COVID in this country. We're going to reach herd immunity before that happens. And that's exactly what happened. We have about 19,000 plus people that have died of COVID in the United States. I don't mean with COVID. I mean of COVID, okay? There's a big difference. But way more than that, 150, 200,000 people, maybe more, that have died from side effects and injuries from the jab. Don't believe what you're hearing on the news. There is no statistics to back that up. The stats are with me, okay? Now, and these jabs and the refusal to take the jabs is costing the military with F-22 pilots and F-35 pilots, and it's costing the police force, and it's costing lots of companies, very, very talented people. And of course, when it comes to cops, you know, bad things are perpetrated by the same people over and over and over again. We don't actually create new criminals. Nobody makes it to like age 30 and then all of a sudden decides, hey, I'm going to go commit crime. No, these people that shoot stuff up and rob stuff and go to jail, they have records. They have records going all the way back to teenagers. It's the same people. And if you don't believe me, well, that's your problem. Prove it to yourself. Go to the courthouse. Go to the courthouse, you know, when they have trial. It's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days a month. They have, you know, criminal trials. I'm not talking about felonies. I'm just talking about misdemeanors. I can tell you, if you go for 3 months, you're going to see the same people over and over and over again. It's about 2 to 3% of society that just doesn't obey the laws. They don't. They enjoy breaking the law. And what does it take? It takes a police force to deal with that 2 or 3% of society. And if you don't have cops, you don't have policemen, you don't have people out there administering the law, and I don't mean protecting you. That's up to you. You protect you. But I mean, you know, following up on crime, especially homicides, then the rate goes up. It's up 17%. Can you believe that? I mean, if anything, if sunburns were up 17%, somebody would do something about it. Somebody would put some kind of, you know, protection in place. It's up 17%. Property crime, you know, vandalism, shoplifting, window breaking, arson. It's up 7%. 7%. when you got 2 or 3% of the population that's committing these crimes, for it to be up 7% means somebody's not catching the bad guys. It's all back to pre-pandemic levels, after the lockdowns and all that crap, where not really good records are being kept during that period of time, but it's all back. It's back without law enforcement being in place. And these economic declines, within the states, this is why you have state after state after state after state, especially blue states, that are in a heavy condition of recession. Not Florida, not Texas, not Tennessee. These states that don't have state income taxes, they don't have these economic problems that everyone else is having. They don't have a state of recession in those states. And this is bad because, it's creating kind of an economic stratification of the states that make up the United States. We don't like to see it that way, but that's the way it is. Typically, historically, what we have seen is that the coastal states do better. The coastal states do better. They trade more readily because the ports are right there. They have denser populations. They have more citified people with factories and all that stuff. But that's not the case. The coastal areas are actually suffering. They're suffering really bad. And it's really badly. And it's primarily because of the jab and the control that these blue governed areas are trying to exert on their people. Red managed areas don't have this problem. They don't have the problem. They don't have the increase in crime that other places are seeing. All right, let's talk about, we already talked about the Department of Justice versus Arizona. I was out in Las Vegas about a year and a half ago. Maybe it was in 2021. And I was talking with some of the state senators and some of the Secretary of State and others from the state of Arizona in Vegas, face to face. We were like having a conversation. And I asked them about, a lot of the problems that Arizona had, and it was typical of what 5 other states beside Arizona were having. And I told them that this is a fight, worth having, that we need to decertify this election, and we need to make sure that Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals lose electorally, that is to say, drop below 270 electors so that the 12th Amendment could kick in and be applied. They didn't like it. They said, we're not going to go that route. That's opening a can of worms. It's Pandora's box, blah, blah, blah. I said, look, war is justice denied. You've heard me say that here on this program. That's what I said to them face to face with a couple hundred people witnessing. And I said, here's the deal. Justice needs to be administered because justice delayed is justice denied. Everybody in the justice business understands this. So what we, the people, want to know is when is justice going to be administered and who is going to administer it? Well, they almost with one voice said, well, that's going to be, State Attorney General Mark Brnovich. Have we seen any action like that? No. I mean, maybe as a last resort. But he suggested the Justice Department was encouraging undocumented immigrants to vote by filing the lawsuit. He said, I will once again be in court defending Arizona against the lawlessness of Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals. That's what he said yesterday. So the State Attorney General Mark Brnovich said in response, Arizona has passed a law that turns the clock back on progress by imposing unlawful and unnecessary requirements that would block eligible voters from the registration rolls for certain federal elections. It's another round of Brnovich versus Biden as his DOJ continues its attempt to undermine our election integrity laws. I'm not buying it. He also said, let's see, he wrote a letter. Let me get to the gist of it. He chided Clark, who is I'm trying to find out. Well, let me just skip ahead here. You'll get it. And the Department of Justice, Federal Department of Justice under Merrick Garland, for using its resources to challenge a common sense law. Brnovich questioned whether Merrick Garland's Department of Justice was attempting to undermine Arizona's sovereignty and destabilize the state's election infrastructure. You must realize there is no federal election infrastructure. It's not supposed to exist. Federal government's not supposed to be involved in elections. That's a state business. It's stated clearly in the Constitution. He said, I hope that it's not your intention. I strongly urge you to reconsider your pursuit of this misguided lawsuit against the state of Arizona and to instead recognize Arizona's constitutional authority to conduct lawful and secure elections. According to Governor Ducey, the measure would address the more than 11,000 voters who, by the way, voted in 2020 but didn't have proof of citizenship in a state where President Biden won by less than 11,000 votes. That's why we expect Arizona to decertify their election. We expect Pennsylvania and Georgia and Michigan and New Hampshire. We expect these states to decertify their election. And when they do, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals drop below 270 electors and the 12th Amendment kicks in. Somebody asked me today, what's the 12th Amendment? Really quick, because I don't have a lot of time, the 12th Amendment is in the Constitution because the forefathers kind of looked forward and they said, what happens if we stray from a two-party system, okay? We become kind of like Europe, where they have, 23 different parties, and or like France. And what happens is the winner of the election ends up with 24% of the vote. That's not a republic. A republic relies on more than 50% of the population electing a president. But in the chance that we end up with three parties, let's say Independent Party and a Republican Party and a Democrat Party, kind of like we had when Clinton was running and Mr. Ears ran as an independent, he pulled votes from George Bush Sr. in running against Clinton in 1996. And Ross Perot was rich and had a message that kind of resonated with people because it was about jobs and it was about money and it was about commerce and, just common sense stuff. And a lot of people didn't like George H.W. Bush. They didn't like him because he was former CIA. They didn't like him because he talked about a new world order. They didn't like him for a lot of reasons, but they also didn't like Clinton. They didn't want to vote for that mess. So they voted for Ross Perot. What it did, it started dividing the vote up, and that's exactly what happened. 57% of the people voted against Bill Clinton. Let me say that again. 57% of voting Americans voted against Bill Clinton. But his opponent was two people. And so Bill Clinton ended up with the majority of the electors, and he won. And that's the way it is. And that's what happened with Kennedy, too. Kennedy didn't win the popular vote. Clinton didn't win the popular vote. But because the vote was divided up, that's how it ended up. So that's what the 12th Amendment is there for. The 12th Amendment says the president has to win more than 50%. In other words, at least 270, because we have 535 electors, 270 of those votes have to go for one guy. And if it doesn't happen, if nobody gets to 270 and the election's over and all the votes have been counted, then Congress will elect the president straight. And it happens by state legislatures. So if you have a Republican legislature in your state, you get one Republican elector. You get one Republican vote for your state. 27 states have Republican legislatures, 20 states have Democrat legislatures, and 3 of them are either independent or it's even in the state. So what happens is the 27 rule. The 27 will elect a Republican president. The Senate will elect the vice president. So it's quite possible under the 12th Amendment that you get a president and vice president who don't know each other or who are of opposite parties. It could happen. It could happen. But the point is, we end up with continuity of government. We don't go forward without a president, and it happens very quickly. I mean, it happens in a matter of hours. It's done. It's done. So if Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals in 22 months from the election, which is November of 2020, if within 22 months Virtual Joe falls under the 270, in other words, some of those states decertify and they say, look, we are pretty sure Joe Biden did not win our state, so we're going to withdraw our electors. If that happens, Virtual Joe drops below 270, Congress is in a position to elect the president and replace Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Done. They're gone, just like that. And we get a new president and a new vice president. Oh, they didn't want to open that can of worms. It's never been done. It's been come close. But, of course, what happened is one of the candidates conceded. This is back in the 1800s. One of the candidates conceded, and the prevailing candidate ended up with enough electors it didn't have to happen. But now we're in a position where the whole world is being sucked into a black hole of war and economic intrigue. And it is a good time to pull out the 12th Amendment and make it work like it was designed to work. And what is the result if we don't do that? Well, if we don't do that, we're heading for a housing bust this year. It's just July, I know, but these things can happen pretty quickly. If we talk about a housing bust, for a lot of listeners, it kind of conjures up memories of the 2008 housing crash. But that was kind of caused by the proliferation of subprime mortgages, which turned out to be dog shit, worth nothing, and we ended up with millions of homes dumped onto the market, and it drove the price of homes down. But a better corollary for the coming, what I'm going to call the Biden bust, is the Carter crash, not the Obama crash. And the Carter crash that occurred during the last couple of years of Carter's term, sales of existing new homes collapsed specifically because the Fed was forced to raise interest rates to get double-digit inflation under control. And the inflation was totally caused by the printing of money from the Carter administration. Carter did several things besides give away Panama Canal. He also codified the SES, which is the Senior Executive Service. In those days, there were thousands of them. And these were primarily Democrats, almost to a T, and they were basically given permanent lifetime employment, couldn't be fired, and they were paid the same as the vice president. That was the structure that was set up. And this was left over from the fascism of Harry Truman and Roosevelt. They had also these senior people that kind of knew the way government was supposed to run, and they managed all the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations. Forget about the secretaries. The secretaries were just a formal appointment. The senior executive service are the people that actually ran those agencies. They were like, former campaign chairmen. They were former committee chairs, people that used to be in politics and knew how politics was supposed to operate, a lot of backroom butt buddies. They knew the way government was supposed to work. They knew that these freshmen coming in would have all these uppity ideas, and they would try to make changes and shit, and they weren't going to allow that to happen. So the senior executive service was put into place. That's more what we're going through right now. So, of course, it produced double-digit mortgage rates, which right now we're at double where we were a year and a half ago. We went from 3%, now we're to 6%. And, like our current chief executive, I'm not even going to call him the president, but let's call him the chief executive, Jimmy Carter was out of his mind. He was delusional about the threat inflation posed to the economy. And when he was selected in November of 1976, because Gerald Ford was summarily attacked by the global media empire, they made fun of him even though he was brilliant. They made him appear like a clumsy doofus, which he was not. He was an athlete. He was brilliant in remembering names. He was Speaker of the House because he had this great talent. But the global media empire did not want a Republican as president, and so they put Jimmy Giveaway Panama Canal Carter in. And, the economy's been waning now for 2 years. The Trump economy was killing it. In 2019, I think everybody on the planet, from Poland to Ontario, California, was jacked. We were all positive. Putin was positive. Xi was positive. Everything was going great. Saudi Arabia was positive. South America was positive. Business was booming, and everybody was making money, right? Everybody was making money. And then they had to smash the Trump economy, so they converted the ordinary flu, this gain-of-function flu, into some kind of pandemic. You remember they convinced us 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and they screwed the world. 187 countries were locked down, and that was the end of that. So that's how they slid Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals into power, even though 12 million more Republicans came to re-elect President Donald Trump. It didn't work. Why? Because, we ran the marathon, and Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals took the bus. They took the bus to the finish line, and they won. And when it comes to elections in the United States of America, winners rule. It doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't matter if you took the bus in the marathon and went around the normal election process. It doesn't matter. You cross the finish line first, and because you do, you get to make all the rules. And you get to clean up all the trash. And that's it. Couldn't be stopped. Once the winning was over, then it was, you want to overthrow a duly elected president. You heard all that already. Anyway, by the end of 1979, the Washington Post was really butthurt about this whole thing, and they published an article. They were so sad that inflation had reached 13.3%, which was actually freaking ridiculous because it was more like 44% in some sectors. Just like right now, they're trying to tell you inflation is 8.6%. Can I see a show of hands out there, all the thousands of people that are listening right now live, how many people believe inflation is 8.6%? I'm just raising my hand because I want you to raise your hand. What? No hands? Okay, I think you're in the same camp as me. Inflation right now is actually somewhere around 30%. I don't mean in every sector, but look at it. Food, building materials, fuel, electricity. Come on, it's 30%. Yeah, there you go. 30%. Exactly right. Exactly right. Captain Super AIDS agrees with me, 30%. It's insanity. Insanity to not scream at your radio when they say, oh, inflation's 8.6%. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. The dollar you had in the bank in 2019 is worth 70 cents right now. Just the cash. Just the cash you have in your wallet is worth 70 cents. Why? Because they're printing money. They're printing billions of dollars a week. Billions of dollars a week. That's inflation. That's how inflation is created. And Carter was defeated by Ronald Reagan because of that inflation, largely. That and the fact that that Reagan was a much better communicator. And the Fed chair, who in those days was Paul Volcker, he wrestled inflation into submission by raising interest rates. He choked the economy to death. Now, Virtual Joe was actually a member of the Senate during Carter's tenure in office. But he seems to have gleaned no message from the latter's economic failures. He doesn't remember. I doubt he remembers putting his depends on this morning. Biden is repeating the same exact mistakes because he is not president. Virtual Joe is not president of the United States any more than Jimmy Carter was president of the United States. The global syndicate was president of the United States. They're the ones writing the words that Joe Biden is reading off his index card and reading off the teleprompter that's the size of, a racetrack, screen. It's not a little teleprompter like this. The damn thing's 5 feet wide and has 6-inch high letters so he can read it. Okay? That's who's president. The president is the think tank that's writing those damn words and writing all the executive orders and writing all the omnibus bills that are being jammed down the throat of Congress by Nancy Pelosi. That's who's president. He was obvious to the inflationary potential associated with his $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. And as Carter ignored the warnings of Milton Friedman, in 1977, great economist, Biden dismissed the council of Obama-era economists such as Lawrence Summers and others, meanwhile, Fed Chair Jerome Powell also managed to forget lessons of the Carter era. He has doubled interest rates, and now you're going to see the Biden bust. The Biden bust is where, at least in North Carolina, homes have been going up about 12% for the last 5-6 years. 12% per year. That's a pretty robust growth. A lot of real estate investors around the country came here. They came here to North Carolina. They came here to Charlotte and Raleigh, and they've been buying up real estate like mad. I mean, in the last 6 years, around our single-family subdivision of about 275 homes, they built about 2,500 apartments. They built about 2,500 apartments because they saw what was going to happen. Everything's going up 12% a year. It's untenable. People can't keep up. They're not getting 12% a year raises. Their credit rating is not going up to the point where they can afford to buy a house that's 48% more expensive than it was 6 years ago. Not going to happen. And when you double the interest rates, you reduce the amount of house people can buy, and now you have nobody that can afford to buy a house. Nobody has the downstroke to get the payments low enough where they can meet the 2141 rule. So the price is high. The price is high, and it's getting higher. And I have friends my age, who cannot rent a house. They're living in hotels. And I lived in hotels because I traveled a lot and I got used to hotel life. They're living in hotels because they cannot afford an apartment. That's inflation, Earth Explorers. And that's not 8.6%. Okay, that's 30%. Anyway, at the end of last week, Freddie Mac's one of the underwriters out there, underwriting authorities. You got Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and FHA. These are typical underwriting authorities that underwrite mortgage-backed securities. Freddie Mac reported an average rate of 5.78%. 5.78%. Well, it would have been a good rate in Carter's day, but you ain't seen nothing yet. If the Fed bumps the fund rate another, let's say 75 basis points, that's 0.75%, by the end of July, which probably is going to happen because this 30% inflation is real. It's real. 8.6% is feel good. That's lube. 8.6% is lube to get it in your butt. Okay, 30% is where it really is. Oh, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Mortgage rates are probably going to be close to 8%. And that's what caused the 1978-81 collapse. So anyway, if you're too young to remember the Carter area, good for you. Good for you. Back before Carter was president, you could buy a brand new car off the showroom, a nice one, for $2,500. No, I'm not kidding. $2,500, $3,000, you could buy a full-size Cadillac. Yeah, I'm serious. And then, of course, the agencies, departments, bureaus, administrations doubled the price of cars pretty quickly to $5,000. Then they doubled again to $10,000, and then they tripled to $30,000. And guess what? The car is no safer. The traffic fatalities per 100,000 miles driven are not any lower than they were in 1987. Folks, it's 2022. And today's cars are no safer than they were in 1987. But you could buy a brand new car for $12,000 in 1987. Can't touch it today. Only 37% of Americans can walk into a dealership and buy a new car today. 63% of the country has to buy a used car. And by the way, about 52% of that percentage, they have to buy at a buy here, pay here lot. Yeah, that means you're paying weekly. You know why? Because they're upside down. They don't have the credit. Credit doesn't matter at a buy here, pay here lot. That's the reality, folks. And you know what? 0% of those people own homes. 0. They live in apartments and trailers. And I have friends right now, this moment, today, 2022 July, that are living in hotels month to month, day to day, actually. That's not where we're supposed to be. That's not America. So if you consider what you would have said to, well, virtually anybody who could fog a mirror, who predicted 2 years ago that you would be paying $5 a gallon for gas, for gasoline. I mean, Trump did. Trump told you exactly what would happen if they were allowed to steal the election, and he knew what was going to happen. He told you how they were going to do it. He told you when they were going to do it, and he told you who was going to do it. And they did it. And they got caught. They got caught on the bus driving to the finish line of the marathon. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because the global media empire just edited out the bus and showed Virtual Joe crossing the finish line first. He won. That's a duly elected president. Boom, he won. And then everything else was an insurrection. But he predicted $5 a gallon, $7, $8 a gallon gas, didn't he? We thought it was crazy. It was ridiculous. I was paying $1.78 a gallon for gas 2 years ago. And likewise, the possibility of committing to double-digit mortgage rate to buy a house, unless you remember the Carter days, that's insane. Nobody would pay 10% interest. In 1980, however, many had to choose between doing just that and not buying a house at all. I was a mortgage lender in, it was 1987. I worked for Park Avenue Mortgage in Nashville, Tennessee, and I made 13% loans all day long. In fact, 9% was a good rate. You had to have A1 credit, I1 credit. You had to have I1 credit to get a 9% rate. I made 13% loans all day. And I even did thrift loans back when the thrift laws were in place. Oh, I made a hell of a commission on those. Anyway, for you, the potential buyer, all of you in the chat room that don't own homes, there really was no choice. If you wanted to live in a home, that's the way it was done. Thousands, we did hundreds and hundreds of mortgages outside of Nashville, Tennessee at that rate. And they couldn't afford the mortgage payments. Yeah. So anyway, this illustrates how these rates got high before, they sent Carter back to Habitat for Humanity. The spike in mortgage rates to 18% produced an all too predictable effect. The housing market fell flat on its ass. Mark J. Perry of the American Enterprise Institute, he summed it up in a comparison to the 2008-2009 real estate crash. Between 78 and 81, existing home sales fell not 10%, not 20, not 30 or 40. It fell 50%. 50%. From 3.986 million homes in 78 to 1.99 million homes by 1981. I'm dead serious. The rest of those homes, they were rented. They were rented. No one could afford to buy them. New home sales and building permits, what we call housing starts, they fell by similar amounts, 50%. You couldn't find a house in frame, and you could drive all around Nashville. I was selling cabinets after I was in the mortgage business, installing cabinets, and very few of that was homes. Most of it was apartments. Anyway, this inevitably led to an unemployment increase for construction workers. People lost their jobs. And it isn't necessary to let things get that bad. It can still be saved if Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals will finally accept responsibility for this inflation. They can blame Putin. They can blame COVID. But it isn't them. It is him. His printing money and sending it all over the world to Ukraine. He just sent a bunch of our oil reserves to the Europeans, 5 million barrels. If he doesn't stop, it's going to kill the housing industry in this country, which is going to kill this country. He will continue to offer gimmicks, like these gas tax holidays, which is a dime, and he's going to put off the difficult decisions because the global syndicate's telling him to do it. They want to destroy America. And the longer this goes on, the closer Biden gets to Carter. Why? Because it's the same president. I'm trying to tell you, the force that was president during Carter is the force that was president during Obama and Biden. It's the same president, the same think tanks over in Brussels The same people in the bowels of the dungeons of Washington, these academics, same president. So you better brace yourself for the Biden bust. Put yourself in position to take advantage of it, because it's coming. It's coming. All right. In about 5 days, Russia is going to shut the pipeline off to Germany. And that means no natural gas. Now, it's summer, so it's not all that critical, but no gas, no electricity, no productivity, no traffic lights, no school, no hospitals. I told you Nord Stream 1 was shut down. That's true. But Nord Stream 1 is going to turn off in 5 days. This is a big deal. And about 2 weeks after that, the European economy is going to come to a stop. I don't mean it's going to slow down. I mean it's going to stop. And the U.S. economy is going to be forced to shut down for lack of goods and services because we're not going to get nothing. Everything that we used to make in America is now made somewhere else. I would say most of everything. You can't get commutators, you can't get armatures, you can't get chips, all kinds of things that we have to have every single day to do manufacturing in this country, from the fan motors in your air conditioner of your car to that train air conditioning unit you have on your house. All that stuff comes from overseas. And once that stops, the West, which is basically Europe and the U.S., it ends. It ends thanks to our sanctions against Russia, which fortifies what I've been telling you for about 6 weeks now, that this war that you're being marketed in the fake stream news every single day is a proxy war. But it's not a proxy war to stop Russia, no matter how many Ukrainian lives it takes. That's what you're being sold. That's not true. This is a proxy war, but it's using Russia against you. You are the one that they're having the war with, and they're using Russia as the proxy to commit that war against you. The economies in your neighborhood, they're not going to be saved from this collapse without cheap Russian energy. It has to happen. The sanctions have to end. There are no other options. Oh, and by the way, how would the West wage war without cheap energy to power it? Not going to get but a few miles, and you're going to come to a stop. The only nation that's going to have plenty of fuel is Russia. That's where the sanctions are leading. That's where they're going. They have destroyed the economy in your neighborhood with the sanctions against Russia. Russia has won. The West has lost. The facts are not in dispute. I'm just telling you. So I have been after you now for a while. I've been nice about it, but now I don't want to be nice. I want to be firm. You need to have at least a 2 or 3 month supply of food. Whatever food you eat, canned goods, noodles, rice, get it. You can still get it. You can get it this week. You could get it this week. After this week, 5 days, I'm talking 5 days. Today's July 6th. By July 11th, you better have your shit together. And you better get some cash out of the bank. If you can get your hands on silver, get it. I don't think you can. You're out of time. I've been telling you to take 25% of your residual cash and turn it into silver. You haven't done it. Then it's already too late for you. But you need to be hitting the ATM this week and getting cash out of the bank. You need to have some greenbacks. Well, we won't see you Sunday night, but we will see you next Wednesday night right here on America Free Radio.
and for listening to